Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Colonel Rob Manning, the Director of Press Operations here at the Department of Defense. Thank you for joining us today for a briefing on DoD preparations for Hurricane Florence. Joining us today is the Assistant to the Secretary of Defense for Homeland Defense, Kenneth P. Rapuano, and U.S. Air Force General Terrence J. O'Shaughnessy, Commander, United States Northern Command and North American Aerospace Defense Command. Their bios can be found on defense.gov website. Mr. Rapuano will begin today's briefing with an opening statement, and he'll be followed by General O'Shaughnessy. Then we'll open it up for questions. We have a limited amount of time today, so during the Q&A portion, please state your name and news outlet and limit yourself to one question and a follow-up. Again, please state your name and outlet. Please turn all electronic devices to the silent mode, the Wi-Fi passwords in the back of the room. Again, this briefing is on DoD preparations for Hurricane Florence. Sir, over to you.
Good afternoon. We in the Department of Defense very much appreciate the media's attention to the status of and preparations for Hurricane Florence. Secretary Mattis and Deputy Secretary Shanahan are monitoring storms in the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans, receiving daily updates from U.S. Indo-Pacific Command and U.S. Northern Command on response efforts, and currently 100% of RFAs have been approved. The Secretary is also receiving reports throughout the day on actions the military services are taking to protect the safety and well-being of the military community and ensure the readiness of DoD installations in the region affected by Hurricane Florence. Hurricane Florence is a dangerous storm, and we encourage anyone and those in our military communities in the path of the storm to heed the warning of state, local, and DoD installation officials. DoD installation officials have the expertise, knowledge, and authorities to provide the best guidance to ensure the safety of our military members and their families, and to ensure the readiness of these installations to provide immediate response support to local communities. The Department has also moved ships, aircraft, and their helicopters from the area to safeguard them from the effects of the storm and to preserve their mission capability. These assets will return once the storm has passed and will support the response as needed. The Department is working very closely with Administrator Long and is prepared to assist FEMA and our other federal partners in supporting the affected regions. Our operations centers are in constant comms and are ready to respond and assist with military capabilities as requested. General O'Shaughnessy will discuss these efforts in greater detail shortly. The Department has significant military capability along the eastern seaboard, with 21 major DoD installations in South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia. Secretary Mattis has pre-approved all requests for life-saving and life-sustaining actions in order to make DoD capabilities immediately available to our federal partners. The Department is fully engaged in support of FEMA for Hurricane Florence. U.S. Northern Command, as the supported combatant command, is the synchronizer for all of DoD response efforts, with General O'Shaughnessy directly responsible to the Secretary of Defense. U.S. Transportation Command, in support of U.S. NORTHCOM, is staging and pre-positioning FEMA resources and preparing to support multimodal transportation of equipment, relief supplies, and personnel, including medical, patient evacuation if necessary. The Defense Logistics Agency is directly supporting FEMA logistics with the procurement and distribution of relief commodities, including food, fuel, and water. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is also directly supporting FEMA and is poised to support flood mitigation, temporary emergency power, temporary roofing, and debris removal. The National Geospatial Agency is supporting FEMA with imagery and analysis and assessment. The National Guard is postured to support response efforts in state active duty status under the command and control of the respective governor. Secretary Mattis recently approved dual status commanders in the states of South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia. General O'Shaughnessy has a robust team at FEMA headquarters and forward deployed with each of the FEMA regions to coordinate operational and tactical support. He will now provide an update on the operational actions taken to prepare for Hurricane Florence. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you, members of the press corps, for your ongoing efforts to inform the public, a role that is especially important in light of the danger that hurricanes and other natural disasters pose. And FEMA Administrator Brock Long said that the emergency response and recovery is a whole community effort, and I could not agree more. So what I'm going to do is walk you through the DoD response and the efforts that we have ongoing from the local level, the state level, and then the federal level. At the local level, it's important to remember that members of the military are also members of the communities that are affected by this storm. North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and Georgia are all home to well-known military bases and installations. And the Secretary of Defense has given authority for life-saving and life-sustaining actions in order to make DoD capabilities immediately available, and local commanders are proactively positioning forces and equipment to be ready. At the state level, National Guard units, whether Army or Air, under the authority of their governors, are ready to respond to the individual and oftentimes neighboring states' needs. We are closely linked and synced with them through FEMA and other emergency coordination networks to ensure that we understand the governor's priorities and requirements and how we, Department of Defense, can contribute to the overall effort. I've been in close communication with each of the state adjutant generals who work directly for the governors, and we are also tied to the emergency management ops centers within each state. We are able to anticipate the robust response from both Title 10, or active duty, and Title 32, the National Guard personnel. The Secretary of Defense has activated dual status commanders in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia to provide seamless command and control over assigned active Guard and response forces. Finally, I'm in constant dialogue with the Chief of the National Guard Bureau, General Joe Wengel, to ensure that our efforts are seamless. Along with FEMA, state governors, and the National Guard, DoD is responding robustly. National Guard commanders have the experience and understanding to lead our forces for this kind of mission, and they have my complete confidence and support. And while I can attest to the tremendous capability that resides within the local and state level, based on the magnitude of this storm, DoD's proactive actions are ensuring that our forces are optimally positioned for immediate response. And you may have heard me say formally that Homeland Defense is the #1 priority for NORTHCOM and NORAD, but we and the rest of DoD are leaning forward to provide military capabilities in support of FEMA and our state and local partners while still defending the homeland. The same capabilities that make the U.S. Armed Forces so powerful in combat lend themselves extraordinarily well to disaster relief, and we are ready and able to support FEMA and state and local officials in situations where unique capabilities are required to assist our communities. I'd like to take this opportunity to give you a snapshot of how we are proactively positioning forces now to respond from the north, from the south, from the east, and from the west across the full spectrum of DoD capabilities at every level by air, by sea, and by land. DoD is providing FEMA the following military installations as staging areas for relief commodities: Fort A.P. Hill, Virginia; Joint Base Bragg, North Carolina; North Auxiliary Airfield, South Carolina; and Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama. And then at Fort Stewart, Georgia, and moving forward from Fort Campbell, Kentucky, we have multiple composite truck companies of approximately 80 light, medium tactical vehicles, or LMTVs, each staged to respond quickly once Florence passes through the area. LMTVs are high water clearance vehicles which can carry supplies or first responders to high water areas not accessible by typical first responder vehicles in order to rescue trapped individuals or perform house-to-house checks. This capability was used to great effect during Hurricane Harvey operations last year. At Hunter Army Airfield, DoD has approximately 35 helicopters that are available for search and rescue operations. A similar unit is at Fort Bliss, Texas, ready to move forward. At Fort Bragg, North Carolina, in addition to acting as a staging area for release supplies, 40 high-wheeled vehicles for rescue and transportation, as well as 7 helicopters, are staged within a hurricane-reinforced hangar positioned for use in SAR and recovery missions. The USS Kearsarge in Arlington, which will literally chase Florence in, has Navy and Marine personnel in addition to life-saving assets to include 16 helicopters and 6 MV-22s. At Moody Air Force Base, Georgia, we have the U.S. Air Force Search and Rescue Package with 6 HH-60s, 2 HC-30s, and 4 pararescue teams ready and able to assist in search and rescue as they are requested. We also have additional search and rescue teams at Moody that came from Patrick Air Force Base, Florida. At Tyndall Air Force Base in Florida, representative of the broader DoD support to Hurricane Florence, 1st Air Force will provide robust command and control, air operations support, as well as assisting in vital search and rescue efforts to include airborne C2 assets such as the Joint STARS E-8 under NORTHCOM authority. We have quite literally surrounded the expected affected area with DoD capability that will be critical in hours and days following the storm's impact. I've shown you the robust capabilities and capacity that DoD has to support and respond immediately. If you look at the graphic, and we look quite literally from the sea, where we have the Kearsarge and Arlington that are going to follow the storm in, all the way through to our Army and our great support that we have with the vehicles that are going to be able to be used in a high water situation, to the helicopters, and all the way literally surrounding this affected area. The Department of Defense is ready to respond when asked from FEMA, when asked from the governors, when asked from the local communities. We are ready to respond, and we are going to be ready for the first little minutes and hours following Florence's impact. Thank you.
Sir, thank you very much. Lita Baldour, Associated Press.
Hi. A couple questions. General, specifically, you talked about the Kearsarge and the Arlington. About how soon do you estimate those two ships will actually be able to get to the affected area, considering the slow pace of the storm? And I have another question. Go ahead.
Yeah, so quite literally, they are dependent on the storm's track. So they are literally following the storm in. So as the storm progresses, they progress in. So they are dependent on the weather conditions to clear to be able to come in. And that's why we're not singularly responsible, looking at them for the responsibility to come from the sea, but we have surrounded it from the land as well, so we can take it before the storm gets there. The aircraft that we have and the vertical lift that we have coming from the south, from the west and from the north, we'll be able to access it, and then as the storm clears, we'll be able to get the Kearsarge and Arlington in.
And then, so secondly, what do you see as the biggest challenge as you look at sort of the scope of the storm? And specifically, one of the issues that has come up in previous storms and other disasters is this DoD waiting for states to ask for something that the military knows they should be asking for and they're not asking for it yet, or asking for quickly enough. How are you addressing what has been sort of a perpetual problem?
Well, first I'll say Secretary Mattis's guidance to me is clear. We are anticipating the needs. We are moving forward under our own authorities to be able to respond as soon as that request is made, so that we don't longer have to generate a force once that request is made, but that force is immediately available. And as we look into this storm and working closely with Brock Long, as he looks at what he thinks his biggest challenges are going to be, in the immediate aftermath of the storm's landing, we think the search and rescue, the vertical lift, and the ability to bring in those helicopters is going to be a key asset. And again, in close coordination with Administrator Brock Long.
The search and rescue is going to be search and rescue is going to be the biggest challenge. Is that particularly like along the water's edge, or is that?
I think because of as we see the storm coming in, even though it's degraded to a Cat 2, we see because of the length of time it's going to be on the coast and the heavy rainfall that'll happen, we do think the flooding, the storm surge combination together will be a very difficult challenge to overcome. And so the search and rescue is probably the first and foremost response that we'd be looking at, but it's not the only response we're looking at. It's just that temporally will be incredibly important to have those assets available, not on a generation in 24 hours, but immediately available. And that's why under Secretary Mattis's authority, we were able to push those forward and have them ready for immediate response.
Okay. Tara Kopp, Military Times.
Thank you. Between all the air, land, and sea assets you have in place, about how many personnel total are involved in this response?
Yes, a good question. At this moment, it's a rapidly changing number, but at this moment we have approximately 7,000 personnel. Of that, just over 4,000 is National Guard and about 3,000 active duty. That number will change and fluctuate drastically over the upcoming hours, and we will be able to keep you informed as that number goes through our press releases.
Okay, and then where does the money come from for this response? Is there a specific emergency response bucket that you're pulling from, or where does it come from?
Go ahead.
So the Stafford Act is the legislation that provides the Department of Homeland Security with disaster relief funds. So federal support for federal missions supporting state and locals in an emergency like this are paid via Stafford Act.
Okay, and then just the last one, looking at this tremendous kind of pre-positioned response, you can't help but think of Puerto Rico last year, where it took days for ships to start together, and realizing as Lita got to, the part of that was the knowledge of having to ask for it. What sort of lessons have been learned as far as being able to respond and help American citizens?
So we did a detailed lesson learned process, as we do post any significant event in the Department of Defense. And what we got out of that assessment is We have processes in place, for example, to develop a common operational picture that we share with all DoD entities and with our federal partners. We have a common asking picture, which is the requests that we are getting or believe that we will be getting from other partners. And then we have a common tasking picture. So we understand what assets from what entity within the department are being sent to support the response to the storm. We've had that in place. We've made some significant improvements to that just based on those 3 storms that were overlapping, literally, creating a level of intensity and depletion of resources that really was unprecedented.
General Chu.
I would just say the close collaboration that we have established between FEMA, between the governors, is allowing us to populate those databases, so we fully understand the requirements, the needs, even before the formal processing has been completed. I think the relationship we have right now is as strong as it's ever been between the federal forces, the local, state forces, and of course FEMA, and under the Administrator Brock Long.
Louis Martinez, ABC.
Hi. Question about prepositioning. I believe during Hurricane Irma, which was, I think, in Florida, you had prepositioned a lot of assets outside the storm area, but then later on they weren't needed at all because the state assets could handle it. As we look at this storm, do you foresee that the Guard will be able to handle SAR immediately after the storm and may not even require your assets?
Well, I would say all the local National Guard is well postured to respond to the search and rescue requirement. The magnitude of this storm may exceed their capability, and if it does, we want to make sure that we are postured and ready to respond at a moment's notice to that. So if we end up with this force that we have that is not needed because either the storm does not have the impact that we think it might, and or the local responders and the National Guard under the governor's authorities can handle it, then that is just fine, and we have met our mission.
Also, with Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, obviously the electrical grid was impacted in a huge way. There have already been predictions that maybe 3/4 of some of these states may lose power for weeks. What kind of a role can you play in that? I mean, specifically the Army Corps of Engineers, I think they were the lead with Puerto Rico afterwards. What can you do with helping them in this immediate effort?
So just as you mentioned, the Army Corps of Engineers will be very deep in that regard. What we are trying to do is synchronize that effort. And so we work closely with the Corps of Engineers, with FEMA, with the local authorities so that we can anticipate those. And the staging areas we have right now, for example, are full of the generators that you mentioned, so that we can be able to respond and push those forward. So it's it's that collaboration, it's a close working, it's bringing all of the elements of the Department of Defense to bear against this challenging problem set.
I would just note that one of the benefits that you get from a disaster on the mainland where you've got multiple contiguous states is there's a tremendous amount of proximity that states will provide in their emergency management assistance compacts. There are electrical repair vehicles heading towards the southeast coast from all over the country as we speak, massing on the outskirts of where the hurricane will have the most impact, ready to go in. If that's not sufficient to meet the need, then the states will make a request of FEMA, and DoD will be there with assets as requested by them to meet the need.
Sylvie Lantome, AFP.
Thank you, sir. Do you have an idea of how many people were evacuated from the coastal area?
I heard the figure over 1 million today, but that was probably as of earlier today. We don't have those statistics. I don't know if General O'Shaughnessy
No, I'd probably direct you to
has.
FEMA for the direct answer.
Tom Squitieri, Talk Media News.
I don't have a question. Sorry, I was scratching my head.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you, Lucas Tomlinson, Fox News.
General, what specifically are you doing differently this year compared to last year with the hurricanes?
Right. I think, as was mentioned, we take the lessons learned from last year. Although it was a phenomenal, robust response, we can always learn from that. And so I think the anticipation, the coordination ahead of time, the collaboration of really understanding what are those requests going to be, and in a manner that will allow us to predictively pre-position our forces has set us up for success for Florence.
There's nothing specifically that you're doing differently this year, then?
There's multiple things that we're doing different with respect to how we're quantifying those requests and how we're able to respond to them in the sense of how we're processing it so that we can do so quicker. But it's not one thing that drives that. It's the multiple things that we're doing in order to drive that time from request to actual response and action, I think is going to set us up for success for this event.
Carla Babb, Voice of America.
Thank you. Two questions instead of a question and a follow-up, if that's okay. So first, we've learned about some of the ships that have been sorted out. What other equipment has been moved out of the area, planes and other things, and about how much has that cost to move those that equipment out for the military? And then my second question is on the search and rescue timing. Every time that there's a hurricane, especially in the Carolinas, there are people in the Outer Banks that do not like to leave because there's only one road and they feel like if they stay, then they don't have to worry about taking days to get back. Can you tell us how long you anticipate it will take to get to people if they get into a dire situation?
Yeah, first let me start by all of the individuals and the citizens should listen to their local government and follow the appropriate guidance that they've been giving with respect to evacuations. This particular storm, I think, is going to be challenging in regard to what you mentioned. Because of the slow-moving nature of the storm, it could very well stay with high winds, inclement weather for a long period of time, which is going to mean that any rescue effort is going to take time. And so we still have the limitations that we have of operating within those weather environments are going to preclude us from necessarily coming in the hours immediately after the storm hits. And so, again, I would really highlight the need, based on the nature of this particular storm, to really heed the evacuation recommendations. With respect to
days, sir?
I think it's hard. It's weather dependent, so it's unfortunately that part's out of our control. What I can tell you is as soon as the weather allows us to, we will be able to respond very quickly. With respect to the movement of the force, of course, we have to move the force to preserve the force. So while there may be costs associated with that, it is obviously prudent for us in order to do so. I don't have an exact cost of what that is, but we can give you a follow-up answer on that. But obviously, it's prudent for us to move it as opposed to have it damaged by the storm.
Tom Bowman, NPR.
Now, the Marines apparently have decided to stay at Camp Lejeune, and they're going to be right in the middle of this storm surge. So are they part of the rescue effort, or they're going to have to find their own way out if things get really bad, number one? And number two, any sense of getting the hospital ship Comfort underway, or and how long would that take if necessary?
Yeah, so first, we have trust and confidence in our installation commanders and the decisions that they make relative to evacuation or non-evacuation. And so we have faith that is, in fact, the right decision to make, and we will stand by ready to support them. And on the positive side, because of their proximity and their great capability, that will also be part of the relief effort that we can bring to bear very quickly.
So they will help in the effort?
They will help in the effort as well. And we're fully coordinated with them. We understand the capability and capacity that they have, and we're working with them to find when they are going to be able to be part of that response.
I just add a note to that. All DoD installation commanders have what we call immediate response authorities. So if there are life-threatening circumstances in the vicinity, in the community that they are in, they have pre-authorization to provide direct support to that. A number of these installations also have mutual aid agreements with state and local authorities. So that just makes more clear, and they've done some pre-planning about the types of capabilities that they would provide, again, in circumstances where there are threats to the community.
I'll probably take this opportunity to but first, I take the opportunity to highlight the first responders and the amazing work that they have done and will continue to do in this effort. And of course, we want to marry up with them and be supportive of them. Specific to your question on the effort, we've been in close coordination with both FEMA as well as the governors and the local state authorities. And at this point, we just don't think that capability is needed at this time, based on the robust capability we have in the surrounding communities for medical support.
Hope, and if you would, identify your outlet for us, please.
Hope Sept with military.com.
Tom actually took my question, but I guess I'll follow up on it, which is, so you've got a situation in Onslow County where the instruction of the civilian authorities and the military authorities is in direct contradiction, and there's a lot of angst coming out of that. I mean, in general, was that decision made by the base commander in collaboration or coordination with Northcom? And is there concern, kind of about the mixed messages where, the civilian authorities are saying to get out and the military is saying to stay?
I would say first the decision was made at the installation level, and we support the decision of our local installation commanders.
Jeff Schlogel, task and purpose.
Thank you. General, can you say how many Marines are aboard the Kearsarge and the Arlington?
Yeah, I can get to the specific numbers of the Marines that are on board, but essentially it's a light special MAGTF equivalent on board. So this is a robust capability and capacity, and it's going to be well suited, especially the MV-22s that have not only the vertical lift but a lot of capacity to bring on board. So this is robust capability and capacity that will come to bear if required. And again, following right in the footsteps of the storm coming in.
Are all the pararescue units, are they all special operations?
They're not all special operations. In fact, we have all of the services have contributed to the pararescue and the rescue operators that are available for us.
Thank you.
Sure. Please state your name and outlet.
Brian Everstein with Air Force Magazine. General, you mentioned the pararescue standing by at Moody, but there are some teams coming in from, I think, New York, California, and Alaska at Dover. Are they being forward deployed to any other locations? Or are they standing by? And can you give me a sense of what other forces you have standing by outside of the immediate area?
Right, I sure can. And one of the things that I would talk to is what we call our second echelon forces. And so what we're looking at is we have this immediate response capability that we know that we need, but we also want to balance that with not putting additional people at risk within the affected area. And so we've also put, besides those that we've talked about here, we've put people in what we call a PTDO, prepare to deploy order, normally at about a 24-hour string that we have them on to respond. And we have them all over the nation ready to respond with the full capability and capacity of the Department of Defense that will be able to be applied here. This is a bit of a microcosm of that in the sense that this is forces that we have that we are bringing forward. In this case, these are Guard forces that have been brought forward under the agreements between the states to bring that capability forward, that we know we have great rescue capability within those 3 units.
So they're staying at Dover for now?
They're staying at Dover for now, but they will be moved forward.
Ryan Brown, CNN.
Hello, General. Thank you for doing this. You talked a little bit about preserving the forest and the need to move certain assets out of the area. Do you have a kind of an overall number of how many assets and personnel have been relocated, given the high concentration of military facilities in the Carolinas and in the area? Do you have an overall number of how much has been relocated?
We can get that number for you, but it will be a moving target in the sense that there's some that moved out early, there's some that are continuing moving out now, and then we'll also be bringing them back in a stair-stepped manner as well. But we can continually update on that movement of that number that will be over time continually changing.
Courtney Cubey, NBC.
Hey, one quick one for you, General Shaughnessy. The prepare to deploy order, how many people are on that right now? Do you know how many? 1,000?
It is thousands of people and units across the entire Department of Defense. It is across all services, so the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines are all contributing to that force. That the individual units have been sourced in the sense of they know that they're on that PTDO and they are prepared to respond.
Then I know this is kind of a tough question, but what do you think, I mean, so once the storm hits, what do you think is going to be the first military assets that start responding? You mentioned search and rescue, but are we talking about helicopters and things off of the ships because they're coming in behind it, and so they will have, the weather will, are we talking land, like vehicles driving up?
I think it's going to be both the helicopters and the land vehicles coming from the south and the west and the north would be the first responders, depending on exactly how the storm tracks. But they'll be able to get in because of the weather conditions, get in sooner than probably coming in from the sea. But that said, we'll have to watch the changing weather conditions to see which will be first.
So like the guys from down at Fort Stewart in the high vehicles, they'll probably be among the first.
Right, and,
we'll see.
And these are not static, so the forces that we have, especially the vehicles that have the capability to operate within the high water, we are actually literally hour by hour looking to see where's the best position to push them forward. We want them absolutely as close as we can get without putting them at risk because we don't want to lose them before we actually have an opportunity to use them.
And And one more thing, in your opening statement, you mentioned, or I'm sorry, forgive me, I'm not sure which one of the two of you said this. You mentioned that Secretary Mattis had pre-approved some actions for life-saving. What does that mean? Does that mean that the military could move forward without a governor's request for?
No, the intent is at the installation. So at pick any of the installations, the commander there has relationships with the first responders in the surrounding community, and they also have capability and capacity within the installation, whether it be firemen, whether it be the ability to respond to an event. That commander has the ability to use that force, the force that they physically have on that installation, to support the local community efforts there for the life-saving type events.
But in addition to that, the Secretary of Defense, a number of movements of Title X U.S. forces into states to provide relief operations require his authorization. So he pre-authorized, so there would be no delay in responding to requests when we receive it. He pre-authorized the authority for those forces to be provided, typically through FEMA or HHS if there's a medical need.
Is that standard or is that new? Is that a?
That's standard.
Tara Kopp, Military Times.
Thank you. I just had a couple of follow-ups on the. So on the search and rescue, you know, we've previously seen, especially with Harvey, multiple basket rescues of people on roofs. But one of the things that came out of that is that the Osprey wasn't best suited for that because it's so powerful that it was, you know, people couldn't get in the baskets. What are you going to envision using the Ospreys for? And then once people are rescued, are they being taken back to the Kearsarge, or are they being taken? Do you have a forward position that you want to bring these people to for medical care and other?
We do, and that's rapidly changing as well. But that's in close coordination with FEMA and with the local authorities, and each individual rescue effort will be specific to that effort and coordinated within the search and rescue enterprise. Specific to your MV-22 question, it has amazing capability, and that capability is that we can bring in a much heavier footprint with the MV-22, and we can use it to either bring position forward, bring supplies in, bring capability into a place that you couldn't obviously land an airplane, you couldn't drive a vehicle, and you can access things with the MV-22 with enough capability and capacity to carry within it that makes it a tremendous asset.
Okay, so it's more for carrying things and not for doing the
individual. That is correct.
Okay.
Nancy Youssef, Wall Street Journal.
Thank you. I wanted to clarify one point earlier. You said 7,000 troops, I'm assuming, are in position, and then thousands other are prepared to deploy. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
And then the other question I had was, we've heard reports that there have been funds cut from FEMA and gone to other places, and I'm curious if that has demanded that DoD provide additional funds that perhaps they didn't have to provide last year in support of hurricane rescue relief.
And working with very closely with Administrator Long, I have not seen that be a factor. All the decisions that are made based on the requirements that are funneled up from the bottom-up approach, and so we have not changed our actions based on anything that you mentioned there, and nor has I seen from Administrator Long a change in his perspective and nothing.
Requests or
or funding.
That's right.
Lita Baldor, AP.
One other quick follow-up. You've talked about the duration and breadth of the storm and the electricity issue. Did you forward place more generators? Was there a bigger effort to get more of those? Do you have any sense of how much your electricity generating capability is going to be?
Yeah, I think in this case, as was mentioned, I think first is the civilian response to this is going to be robust, and we already have that in place. In close coordination with FEMA, we have a good understanding of what that response is. In addition to that, though, we want to be prepared, and that's why we have the additional from the Army Corps of Engineers and others generator capability, because we know typically in this type of incident, that power generation can be a factor, especially given the length of the storms sitting there. We could have some significant damage to the power infrastructure, and so we just want to be prepared for that. But again, the first response is again from the local governments, and then through FEMA asking for our capability within the Corps of Engineers as an example.
Do you have a size or number or anything of the military potential response for that?
I couldn't put in a relationship to last year's effort. I don't have a ratio as it compares to last year's number. So.
Any sort of, you don't have it?
Jeff's local task and purpose.
A question for both of you. Can you talk about the role of posse comitatus here? Does that mean that any law enforcement missions will be carried out strictly by the National Guard under state status because federal troops are not allowed to enforce civilian law in the United States?
So typically, in a disaster, the Department of Defense provides no Title X law enforcement. That's provided by National Guard and state active duty status, local police. Federal law enforcement will often augment disaster areas if requested by the state. So Department of Defense law enforcement would be a very unique circumstance and would require special legal considerations.
So you don't expect federal Title X forces to be serving in a kind of law enforcement capacity?
We don't.
Air Force Magazine.
Last year during Harvey and during the fires over the summer, MQ-9s helped coordinate response and RC-26s. Are there any plans to use military ISR to help out if needed? Are there any on standby?
So the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency is providing imagery to FEMA to support their assessment, particularly their during and post-storm assessment of the most affected areas so they can direct their resources to the areas that need it most. It's also provided to the states, so they have that awareness as well.
We have time for one more question. Lucas Tomlinson, Fox.
I know Coast Guard doesn't fall under DOD any longer, but are you still the point man? Can you reach out to the Coast Guard assets if they're needed? Does that fall under your purview for a hurricane response?
It does, and we do. In fact, yesterday I met with the Vice Commandant of the Coast Guard. We meet regularly. We talk regularly. We have this particular search and rescue effort is in collaboration with the Coast Guard. They bring robust capability and capacity, not only in vertical lift and in their helicopters, but also in their small boats and their ability to respond there. The beauty of the way we have this set up in this particular case is it's a collaborative effort, and so the Coast Guard is fully integrated in this with, in fact, as the lead federal agency for the search and rescue, of which we tie in all of our capability and capacity to augment the overall effort. So even though we may be from different departments, there is no daylight between us.
But to be clear, we coordinate and integrate closely with the Coast Guard, but they are directed by the Department of Homeland Security in the disaster response context.
You know how many assets they have in place already for the storm? Coast Guard assets? How many helicopters?
I can't give you the exact number. I can tell you, as we've coordinated it out, though, in our efforts, they are actually completely integrated. In fact, some locations have both DOD and Coast Guard capacity on the same locations, and even our command and control that we're working together is linked with them.
Speaking of planning, do you expect to do more briefings here in the coming days if necessary?
If necessary.
Yes, I think at large from the Department of Defense we'll determine based on the way the storm plays out the appropriate representatives.
May I ask a non-hurricane question? Since you're with NORTHCOM and we've had 2 incidents off of Alaska intercepting Russian bombers, were these missions part of this large Vostok exercise, or was this separate? And do you anticipate these missions occurring on the Russian side in the near future?
Yeah, thanks for highlighting that. It's actually not under the NORTHCOM authority that we do that, but under NORAD, but I'm also the commander of NORAD as well. But these last few interceptors that we've done, we've been able to launch F-22s and our AWACS to be able to intercept them as they're in and near our ADAs. Based on the larger exercise of Vostok, we don't see this as directly part of Vostok, although very much related to it in the overall efforts. We are fully maintaining that ability to respond, and one of the reasons I appreciate you bringing up this point is as we do all this hurricane prep, we are continuing to maintain our ability to defend the homeland, and even as we move forces out in order to get out of the hurricane's path, and as we apply force towards the hurricane recovery efforts, we will maintain that ability for the Homeland Defense and under both the NORTHCOM and NORAD. And so if we do have additional long-range aviation or RMA activity, then we will be able to respond to it with no drop in our ability to respond.
I'm sorry, gentlemen, we have time just for your closing comments. We'll follow up with you, Ryan. Thank you.
Again, I would just thank you all for your attention to this matter and your continuing to communicate to the American public, particularly those potentially affected areas, the importance of tracking the news in terms of the progression of the storm and following the instructions from their state and local and federal leaders who are providing information and guidance as how they can best protect their family and property.
I think over the next few days and weeks, DoD will be a vital partner for state and local response efforts through FEMA. I want to again, thank and give praise to our first responders. We look forward to working closely with them. And then we have bases and installation in the storm's path, and our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guardsmen, and their families are part of these local communities, and therefore, and as such, we are part of the response. This is a no-fail mission for us. It's very personal for us, and we're capable, we're ready, and we're postured for success. Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time today.